people have been through what we go through, so we get the benefit of their experience, the internet, and we can record things with some accuracy. Okay, let's look at some actual miracles. Levitation. Jesus walks on water. It appears in John 6 and Matthew 14. This was part of the story that I wasn't that familiar with, but it raised an eyebrow because I'd always pictured a crowd of people on the shore watching this event, you know, while it happened. I mean, I know the apostles were on the boat and Peter gets out and everything, but I always had in my mind that other people were doing it, were watching too. There he is. Artist's conception of Jesus. But this whole furlong thing, 25 to 30 furlongs. Anybody know how long a furlong is? It's not used. How long is it?
1/8 of a mile.
It's, a furlong is 220 yards. So 25 furlongs is 5,500 yards, 16,500 feet, a little over 3 miles. So in order for you to see this event, if you weren't on the boat, is like us being able to stick your head out the window here and see something on the north side of I-70 and tell you what happened, just to get an idea. So there were no witnesses on shore. It's all dependent on the versions of the apostles, maybe if one of them wrote the story in the first place, and they wouldn't have any reason to lie about what Jesus did. A modern equivalent of this, Chris Angel, the magician, you guys know him? Walked on water. It's a little different though. This is a magic trick. It's kind of cool actually. And it depends on a few different things. It depends on having your own friends in the pool with you. Because what are they doing? They're stirring up the water. You don't want a smooth water because he's stepping on things, obviously, and if the water's turbulent on top, it's harder to see what he's stepping on. The camera is at a certain angle, which also helps that. And they're whooping it up like, you know, like he's Jesus, so they're all shills, and that helps the whole thing, too. There are other cases. Some girl walks on the water. That might just be a Photoshop thing. Photoshop is always a danger. All photos should be considered works of fiction initially. Even more than this, and here's where I say, I love guys like this because they're 100% fakes. This guy sat out in front of the White House for a while like this. Now, it is kind of a cool trick. Notice the bamboo appearing to be bamboo cane. It ain't bamboo, people. There's something, it may be bamboo on the outside, but that's strong, whatever it is. Because this bamboo goes up and then underneath him. That's why he's got baggy clothes on in both of these photos. And the other thing is, this rug here, I would like to take a peek underneath, because I think either there's going to be a hole in the concrete or in the asphalt there, or this whole thing is holding up an iron plate or something like that. So if you got there early in the morning and watched this guy set up, you probably wouldn't be so impressed, like these guys in the back, who are on the phone talking to someone as a guy defies gravity right in front of them. There's an old one. These guys in India do this all the time. Baggy clothes. The stick is all covered up. I just stay there all day. That's what I would do. I just stay there. He's got to take a leak sometime. Here's a guy in mid-bounce to those right. And here's a guy. I mean, again, I can't look at these things without trying to figure out what's going on here. But the lighting on this guy appears to be different from the lighting in the rest of the room. I'm not sure. I would have a video person or a picture person look at the pixels dividing the outline of him and where the room starts out. But I'll tell you one thing that really looks suspicious to me. Look at how flat his ass is under there. quick second. This is a possible, it might not be a hoax, it might not be a told story. There is a possible explanation for this that is a nicer explanation. And it's simply a very simple explanation, which I would say is kind of obvious. There's just a sandbar out there. Just standing under something 2 inches under the water. Okay, miracle number 2, faith healing. Jesus heals the sick. This happens a number of times, although sometimes begrudgingly. Jesus sometimes is talking about, don't ask me, I'm not a circus act. Jesus, if you were a nice guy, you'd go around healing everyone you could. Now, these are pretty tough things to heal. Especially that third one, I would love to see someone heal something like this. Why? Because it's so testable. My favorite is George Carlin's quote, where he said, really want to test a faith healer, tell her you want a smaller shoe size. Benny Hinn is the modern equivalent. I've been to 3 Benny Hinn concerts. Do you guys know who he is? Yeah, the big comb over. Benny Hinn is not a healer. If you attend one of those concerts, you see many of the reasons why. For instance, this is a floor plan of the Anaheim Pond, now called the Honda Center. I saw him twice at the Anaheim Pond, and Benny and his people are up at the front of the stage like this. Here's where the basketball floor is and the hockey rink. Way at the back of the floor level is where all the really sick people are. They're in gurneys, they're on wheelchairs, some of them are paraplegic, some of them are quadriplegic. They are all confined to the back of the stage here. There's a line up along this side. The third time I went, I felt the power. I was up in the bleachers up here when I knew the cue was coming, because he said, somebody's got something with their leg, now feels the power of God. So I sprinted down, and I talked to someone in the back here, and I said, I felt this lightning go through my leg, and my knee was hurt, and now I feel good. And they said, come on, come forward. They moved me like halfway up the line, so now at the 50-yard line, and someone else stops me, and they said, what are you doing here? I said, lightning came through, and I went through my leg, and I was a high school football injury, and now I feel I can run again. Great, I went up to the front of the line. Then somebody stopped me, and she identified herself, and she said, I'm Dr. So-and-so, and she said, tell me what was wrong with you. And I started my whole spiel again about the lightning, and she said, no, tell me physically what was wrong with your leg. And I said, well, it was an exterior cruciate ligament. And she said, okay, get in the short line right behind the stage. Now, for all of you medical fans out there, there's no such thing as an exterior cruciate ligament. Maybe she was just a crappy doctor or what, but that was how I got to be 4 people away from the stage. Did I have to prove anything or show a certificate or anything like that? No way. All they needed to do is hear me tell the story with some excitement and see that I could obviously go up on stage now and appear before the whole rest of the people. They stopped the show when I was number 2 in line. Someday, though. There's Benny's stage right there. Those are Benny's wheelchairs, not the people wheelchairs. A lot of people walk up to somewhere in the floor and then get put in a wheelchair and are wheeled up there and then somehow find miraculous healing. Now, people obviously he's having some success on stage. If you ever watch him on TV, people are feeling, for the most part, of course, you don't know what hits the editing room floor, but for the most part, people are having some success up there, and they are feeling better. For a while, anyway. Why is that? Well, you just stood on stage in front of 20,000 people. If you think giving a speech in civics class is scary? Stand in front of 20,000 people. That is an adrenaline rush, and an adrenaline defeats pain. I played football in college, and many a time I come home on Saturday night after the game and look down, and my hand was swollen. I didn't feel it during the game, I didn't feel it after the game. But later on, when everything calmed down, that's hurting right now. The adrenaline kept it away. Big production, big sound, lights, music. There's a major psychological component to what's going on in those feelings. And the hand of God just went through this man's hand and touched you. I don't believe that, but they do. And if you believe that, your lumbago's going to go away for a little while. Now, Jesus did similar things. You stand up in front of a group of people. You ascribe some powers to this guy. Very similar. Hand of God goes through his hand. For at least minor illnesses and pains, which you don't hear about in the Bible, it works to some degree. There's no way to follow up. They do depend on pre-existing belief system. You have to buy into the fact that they are healing. The screeners do a great job. They keep all the troublemakers out. They keep all the sick people out. There's never anyone who goes on that stage who cannot make some visual improvement while they're on the stage. And no follow-up. They're not going to people and saying, hey, remember 2 weeks ago when you were on Benny? Okay, resurrection. Here comes my favorite quote in the whole Bible, maybe you'll agree. Jesus shows up. Lazarus has got a sister named Martha, and she asks Jesus, can you come over and help out? My brother's dead. So they go to the tomb, and Jesus says, pull the stone away. Then Martha says, he stinketh. For he hath been dead for days. 4 days. Okay, so that's accurate so far. Artist recreation. Maybe that's Martha. I don't know. Yeah, that's a Jerry Springer audience right there. Okay, so how do we know Lazarus was dead? I know his sister says it, but as we've already seen, people get things wrong all the time. So how do we know? And frankly, how do they know? Did they do anything to double check? They check for a pulse, they hold a mirror under his nose, they shine a light in his eye, assess body temperature. These things are all within the reach of first century people trying to tell if someone's alive or not. Obviously, we have more tools today. Okay, now Jesus rises from the dead. How do we know he was dead? Here's a real case from Caracas, from Reuters. Venezuelan guy gets killed in a car crash. Was declared dead after a highway accident. Was in the morgue. They started to do the autopsy on him, and he woke up. They quickly sought to stitch up the incision on his face. Could you imagine you get in a car crash and you wake up in a morgue and somebody's cutting your face open? I woke up because the pain was unbearable, he said. His wife turned up to claim the body and found him alive in the hallway. So, crazy as it sounds, these mistakes are made. This happened 10 or 15 years ago. If it could happen 10 or 15 years ago, it could certainly happen 2,000 years ago. Big problem here, the stories don't jive at the tomb. Who visited the tomb after the crucifixion? John says Mary Magdalene was there. Matthew says Mary and Mary were there. Mark says Salome was also there. Luke says Joanna and other women were also there. So you either have 1, 2, 3, or 5 plus witnesses. That's bad.